Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest Tram Town Talk episode. I'm here today with the wonderful Robert, who I actually met on a Heritage Tram tour. And we got talking, and I discovered Robert's got this fantastic background of knowledge. And I thought, well, you've got to be on this latest episode that we're doing. So, welcome, Robert. Welcome to Tram Talks. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks for agreeing to do this. We said, haven't we, that we're going to do this in two halves.
Yeah.
One actually on a tram, just generally talking, and then we're going to organise at some point a second part, which will allow Robert to sort of showcase some of the things that go on and connect to the line itself
Right.
on a tram.
Yeah.
Because when we were on that tram, you were busy pointing things out.
That's
to me,
right.
weren't you?
Yeah. It was Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, you were really good at it as well.
Yeah. Go.
So Robert, so in terms of your background, you grew up on near a tram stop, I believe.
That's right. I lived in Fleetwood as a child, and actually lived on the main street. Dad was a shop manager of a fruit and veg shop on Lord Street in Fleetwood, and actually outside the front door there was a tram stop. And as a kid, the bedroom actually looked onto the main street, so you can say when I went to bed, I could hear the trams rolling past, and early morning I could hear them rolling past, and basically grew up with them around me. And not only that, there was other forms of transport in Fleetwood. We could hear the wagons shunting around because the railway was opening in Fleetwood in those days, and you could actually hear fishermen, not fishermen, people who worked on the docks with clogs on, very early in the morning, walking down to the docks as well.
Gosh.
Because over the road from the fruit and veg shop where I lived was a paper shop which opened very early.
Wow.
So on the way to the docks, the clogs would be going to be buying the packet of fags and the newspaper.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
So really sensory, isn't it? That
Yeah, it's things you remember. And
trams, trains, the fishing industry.
And they actually, the company that owned the shop was a Liverpool-based company, and Dad had moved from Liverpool to Fleetwood to open this new shop.
Yeah.
And of course, we used to go back and see the family in Liverpool a lot, and that was by steam train in those days.
Wow.
So not only was I surrounded by trams, buses, there was trains as well, and boats, of course. Used to watch all the trawlers going out to Iceland and the home waters in Scotland, and we still had a lot of Isle of Man sailings from Fleetwood in those days as well.
Lord. Yeah, we forget, don't we? Fleetwood was really at the centre of of communications in terms of transport and because of its industries and its geographical position.
That's right. Well, it was purpose built as Fleetwood. It wasn't, an old place like Pontley Fell dates back many years, but Fleetwood apparently was only thought of by Sir Peter Escott Fleetwood, and it was mapped out by Decimus Burton, the famous architect, and it was only like 1830 that Fleetwood came into existence.
Yeah, a new town of its day.
It was a new town of its day, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in terms of the sort of years that you were growing up with this, what sort of time frame was that, Robert?
Well, I was born in 1953, and I went to school in Fleetwood and ended up in my later days at Fleetwood Grammar School. And as a kid at school, we went to Chaucer Road School in Fleetwood, and if it's a stormy day, we used to sing Eternal Father, Strong to Save in the school assembly. Wow. Because the majority of kids in the class, they had fathers and uncles at sea, brothers and that. So, most of the town was connected with the fishing industry, one way or another. But the other main industry in the Fleetwood area was the ICI as well.
Of course, yeah.
And there was a lot of jobs in the civil service as well. So basically, it was fishing, the ICI or civil service, most of the jobs in the 60s, 70s.
Yeah.
It's all changed now.
Yeah, massively, hasn't it?
Yeah,
massively.
yeah.
And of course, trams were right at the heart of this network.
Yeah, well, when I went to school in 1964, we moved to live in Cleveland, and I still went to school in Fleetwood, and I always chose to go by tram from Cleveland, because where we lived in Cleveland, it was closer to the tram stop than it was to the bus route. You could either get a bus pass with a Ribble bus, or when you came into the sixth form, you was actually supposed to pay full fare, so you got a half fare pass to go on the tram. So I always chose the tram. And on busy market days, instead of getting on at the nearest stop to the grammar school, which was either Stanley Road or Ash Street, I would walk down to the ferry and wait for a tram there. And if it was a double deck coming, I'd wait for the next one. If I saw it was one of these, a Coronation car, because these were my favourites when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And I have great memories of going to school on the trams in the winter time when it was just the local trams, you know, rather than the extras that
Yeah,
ran. Yeah, great memories of the trams.
absolutely. And it's nice actually today, because I, for those who don't know, I live in near Ankersome, so you see, well, I live in Ankersome,
Yeah,
but not too far away from the Ankersome Lane tram stop. And at mornings and afternoons, it's round with school kids because doing
yeah,
exactly the same thing that you did,
that's right.
going to
Yeah,
Fleetwood on the
yeah,
tram. And it's nice, isn't it, of that world that's lost. You know, the trams have actually still kept that bit going there, and
that's
still,
right. Yeah, it's still the same route as it always was. Yeah,
yeah, and people using it in similar
yeah,
ways.
that's right.
So in terms of your experience, then, did you ever go into the inland routes of Blackpool at all?
Well, I never actually travelled on them. I do remember as a kid when we was in Blackpool town centre. I remember the trams coming up Clifton Street and doing the right turn by the
Oh
post
yeah,
office.
yeah.
And I remember the time the Western train took, I think it was Cliff Richard or the Shadows, to
Oh
the
yeah,
what was the ABC cinema in those days, and I think it was a big theatre as well there. I do
yeah.
remember that, and I vividly remember the trams coming around the town centre because there used to be like a big horse with a man on it at Hunters it was called, the men's outfitters, and they came round that corner,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
near the post office. I remember that as a child, yeah.
And I bet that sounded a bit screechy, didn't
Oh
it?
yeah, and of course, when I lived in Fleetwood, we started the North Station route,
Oh yes,
and
of
there used to be
course.
some very old trams on that, like I think they were called the ex-pantograph cars,
Oh
and
yes.
they were very old compared with the other ones. We used to go on that because living in Fleetwood, if we went to Blackpool, we had the choice of the Stargate tram,
Oh yeah,
the Fleetwood tram, the 14 bus, which was every half hour.
yeah.
They used to run in conjunction with Ribble, so they couldn't run every 10,
Ah,
15 minutes. They could only run like 2 an hour.
yeah.
So there was those, and very occasionally, as a treat, we'd come home by train. There was some of the trains came out of Blackpool North, and instead of calling at Polton, they went around the Polton curve. So
Oh
it'd be
wow,
Thornton Cleavery's, Bernays, and Wyandotte we used to get off. That was the nearest stop
wow. So
to
you
where we
literally
lived.
go back home on the train.
Very, very occasionally. I
Yeah,
think it must have been daily on the train. It was very
yeah,
rare we did. I perhaps remember once or twice doing that.
yeah. But again, yeah, that's would seem very alien to anybody now who goes
Oh
to Blackpool
yeah,
North, wouldn't it?
it was ridiculously quick though. It's from Blackpool to Fleetwood. I think it's less than 15 minutes.
Yeah,
Can't remember exactly, but
but not long
because
at
it was
all.
like first stop Thornton Cleavery's. It didn't stop at Leighton. It went round the curve, and you
Yeah.
probably be in Thornton Cleavery's in 8 or 9 minutes, and then be Bernays, Wyandotte, and Fleetwood.
Wow.
Really
Yeah.
quick.
Absolutely. Were many people using that line at all?
I don't think there was that many on the train we travelled on because we'd been somewhere in the evening. I don't know if it's a picture we've been to or the Tower Circus or something because it was quite late on. Mind you, when you're a kid, you say it's late on. It's probably only about quarter to
Anything
10,
after
you
six
know.
o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah, it's after 6 o'clock, so it's
Yeah.
late. Yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And in terms of your memories of the Fleetwood system, because obviously that was going through a lot of trials in itself.
Yeah.
At one point, for a long time, it was the only inland route.
Only street tramway, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bit
Yeah.
by the Metropole and Lord Street, of course, are the only street tramways left
Yeah.
in the country. I do remember as a child because my brother was actually keener on trams than what I was when we were young. And I think it was 1957, I was only about 4. My brother was about 3 years old. And my mum took us on the last chance we'd ever go on a Liverpool tram. And I
Oh
remember we went to
wow.
Page Moss. I
Yeah.
remember going to Page Moss and we sat upstairs at the front. It was more for my brother's benefit. He was very keen on trams
Yeah.
then because he was
Yeah.
that bit older than me.
Yeah.
So I have a memory of that as well. So
And it's great, isn't it? I think Fleetwood is very unrecognised for its actual historical legacy,
that's right,
because
yeah.
it's the only therefore town that's had a continuous tramway running through it,
Yeah.
whereas others have stopped and it may have brought them back, but they've kept it going, haven't they?
Well, Fleetwood's claim to fame for only a few years before the railway was built over Shap. We had a railway, the Preston and Wire Railway came to Fleetwood.
Yeah.
And Queen Victoria visited Fleetwood by train and travelled on a journey to Scotland by steamer to Ardrossan.
Yeah.
And that was the way they went to Scotland before they built the railway over Shap in 1846. So Fleetwood did have its claim to fame for a few years
Hence,
as
I
being
guess
an
the Euston Hotel,
Anglo-Scottish
isn't
route.
it?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why they call it the North
Yeah.
Euston, yeah.
I,
Anglo-Scottish route was
I
Fleetwood,
remember
yeah.
seeing at London Euston there is one of the remaining sort of, it looks traditional anyway, because obviously London Euston,
Yeah.
as anybody knows, isn't traditional. It's a modernist design, but there is a remnant of a column or something on the outside, and I remember seeing Fleetwood on it.
Oh yeah, it would be, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's the old gatehouse or something.
is
There
that
used
what
to
it
be the
is? That's
big
right.
Doric arch there was, wasn't there?
Yeah,
And either
that's right.
side of them,
Yeah,
I think had destinations. You know where the
yeah.
LMS went to. Fleetwood was one of the main
That's it, and it
destinations.
wasn't just sort of an afterthought; it was very prominent, so you could see then it
Yeah,
meant something
yeah, it was. Yeah,
to go there. And in terms of your the connection with the trams, a lot of people that we've discovered that come to Tramtown, Robert, they sort of grow up with something or that may have been on holiday
yeah,
or
yeah.
lived it. They then forget about it as they go through life, and then they sort of reconnect again with the tramways. They've got older. Did that happen to you, or did you have a sort of
Well,
continual connection
well,
with
what
it?
happened when I was a student after I did my A levels before I went to university college? I had 2 summers working on the tram, so that
Oh
I
wow!
saw it from the actual working
Gosh,
side
so
of it.
you're on the
Then,
other side of it.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
actually worked on it as a conductor in '72, and in '73 I did work on the buses as well. So I had quite an experience working on the trams. A lot of them that I worked on are no longer here, of course.
Yeah,
There was
yeah,
still some of this type of tram, the Coronation tram. Some of those were still in service. I think only 3 or 4 of them,
yeah,
and they had been converted by then to the English electric type controller rather than the vanback, which they were built with.
yeah.
But if you worked on one of these, it was superb to work on because you weren't meant to, but you could carry probably a dozen standing on the platform and like 6 or 7 either side.
Ah,
You're not meant to do it. You're only allowed, the trade union had an agreement whereby you only had like 6 or 7 standing, but you could get 20 standing on without it being unsafe, basically.
yeah, yeah,
But even more because
yeah,
the platform was huge. And actually loading and unloading this type of tram, they could get on one side of the door and get off the other. They were really good to
mm.
work on, and because they were so heavy as well, they didn't bounce about like the other types of trams. They were lovely to work on with these.
What I'll try and do for viewers is add a little bit of footage in
Yeah,
so that you can see what Robert's talking about
yeah,
now of
yeah.
what this tram is, because it is a unique tram, isn't it?
Oh
This is
yeah,
uh,
these were built specially for Blackpool, and of course, if you read the history of them, they were very heavy. They damaged the track, and
yeah,
they had 4 motors instead of 2, so they drew a lot of electric current from the wires.
mm.
And they had a lot of the modern technology they put in, and the vanback controllers. They suffered through the ingress of the salt air, and the sand
Yes,
didn't do them any good.
yeah, I can
But it was a
imagine.
wonderful idea. I had one in Leeds or somewhere inland that worked. And in
Yeah,
fact, the Martin route, the inland route, had the vanback controls, and it never suffered with anything because it was away off the prom.
yeah. So
Yeah,
obviously, coastal conditions,
yeah,
oxidization, and all
yeah,
these
yeah.
things, always a challenge, isn't
Well,
it?
one of the famous stories is on the platform, and there was a gentleman getting off the tram, and something had gone wrong up in the control system, which was above the platform in the
Mm.
like trolley tower, and melted solder dripped down onto his
Oh,
nylon shirt, which he wore in those days, and it
oh,
melted it. Yeah. Now how true it is, I don't know, but it's perhaps a bit of folklore behind it. But that is the story that
yes, yeah.
that sort of thing did happen.
There'd be phone calls and letters, I
Yeah,
imagine. And it is definitely a 1950s feel to it as well, isn't there?
yeah.
A lot of Art Deco in Blackpool
It's very
trams.
heavy though, like the side panels here are just solid steel. They're built by Charles Roberts of Wakefield, which are like they built big coal wagons and things for the railway.
Yeah,
They were a bit over engineered really.
I don't know a lot about these trams, but I do know, and I don't know if you know this, Robert. There was a second customer that brought these particular trams.
Oh yeah,
Blackpool was one,
yeah.
and the other was the Khartoum tram
Oh, was it? No, I
system.
didn't know that. No.
And they specifically didn't want anything that was could be eaten by termites or
Oh, of course,
and so
yeah,
so
yeah.
so
That's solid suit
there was
these, yeah, because it's all
it's
pretty well lot of metal on
a
them,
lot
isn't
of
there?
metal,
Yeah,
isn't it, when you look at
yeah,
it? And I had a look. I think it was there's a local website. I can't recall. I put the details and thing, and there's a really good story about these trams in Khartoum,
Oh, I didn't know that. No,
but
no.
without this. But they look similar. You can see the window
Yeah,
designs, how they lift
yeah,
forwards,
yeah.
and I was like, oh my gosh, that was one of them. So somewhere there will be remnants of one of these in the
God,
Sudan,
that's interesting.
which
Yeah,
is amazing, isn't it?
yeah.
But it also said a lot, I guess, about the 1950s that apart from Blackpool, nobody else was looking for new.
No, they
They were
were all
getting rid of
going.
them.
Well, they got rid of trolley buses as well, didn't they? When you look
Yeah.
now, all this green business, I think they could have
Oh,
done well to keep them. Really.
we said the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
What towns and cities around the country would give to have a network like Bradford and its
Yeah.
trolley bus system?
As a child living in Fleetwood, I vaguely remember the only time I saw a trolley bus was when we had some of the family moved to live at Cardiff. They still had them in Cardiff in about '68,
So,
I think,
Robert,
or perhaps
you
earlier.
mentioned there something really interesting. I couldn't not pick up on this.
Yeah.
So obviously you said that you'd worked for 2 years or so
Yeah,
as a
2 summers,
conductor.
yeah.
So obviously this would have been the operational heart then,
Yeah.
at Tram Town. I mean, obviously then it wasn't Tram Town; it was just a normal tram depot.
Yeah.
So what was life like working as a guard in the early 70s?
Yeah, it's very busy in here. Like, you used to come in, if you was on the early shift, you'd go and ask, if you got here before you drive, you'd ask what your tram was, and you'd switch the things on, the compressor and that. You wouldn't switch you probably, you probably would switch the main switch on for them. They showed you what to do, and whether you was meant to or not, I don't know. But the expression was, have you set it up? Obviously, you'd leave the driver to do the headlights and stuff like that, but you'd set the compressor going and the inside lights, check the bell was working, do the destination blinds, and that was it. It was a very busy place.
Yes, yeah. So how many people would have been working here around that
I'm
time?
not too sure of the numbers, but it'd be full. It'd be full of trams, and if it was a illuminations weekend or so, and you'd almost look in here. The only trams that'd be in this depot were those that had broken down, waited for maintenance. They'd have everyone out. It'd be empty, this depot, after the lights got switched on.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing to see. Like it when you got back on the last Fleetwood, coming on, midnight. You'd just about slot in, near the doorway there. It'd be full of trams, but like I say, if it's busy, the place would be empty. Everything that moved would be out.
Yeah, success would be an empty depot.
Oh yeah,
effect,
yeah. Well, in fact, the hours were pretty well unlimited. What you could work, you could be on an early shift and work till say 8 or 9 at night.
Wow.
on illuminated tours, and then be back at 6 the next morning as a conductor.
Yeah.
There's no limit on your hours. No.
Yeah.
The Health and Safety at Work Act didn't come out till the mid-70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite a long time after I worked on.
And so it was throwing everything they could at it at that point.
Oh yeah, well, as a student, you was saving up, because you knew you were going to college. You wasn't working, so you'd earn as much as you could. You wouldn't turn overtime down.
No, and you're younger, you've got more energy.
Oh yeah. Like I lived at mum and dad's, and where I lived in Cleveland, I'd walk down to Cleveland's for the staff. Well, it was a staff bus in those days. 5:23 off Ash Street, and there was one even earlier if you was on very early starts.
Yeah.
So you could always get to and from work.
Brilliant.
And they used to run a staff bus to Fleetwood in the early hours at morning. I can't remember what time it was. It was well after midnight anyway.
Yeah. So did you work at a particular tram, or did you turn up and find out what tram you got that day? Or?
Yeah, when you came in, you knew what you was on. You used to have what they called an output sheet, and you knew who you was working with. You're all identified by numbers. You didn't have names. It was all a staff number. I was 4327, and you'd look who your driver was, and you'd find him, and that'd be it. You was told what tram to take. There used to be a man in the corner just where we was earlier.
Yes.
He was like the shed master.
Yeah.
Like you'd have on an engine shed on the railway. He had the list of what tram you was taking out.
Yeah.
But if you was on a service tram, like the service to Fleetwood, you had a route card, number 1 up to whatever it was. Say he had 16 trams out on the Fleetwood service. Number 1 would be, it'd tell you what time you left depot, and it'd be there. You kept it in the tram. You didn't have hold of it. It was in the cab of the tram.
Yes. Yeah.
So you'd be working to a set service. If you was on the first tram to Fleetwood, one of your duties was when you got to Bispham, you had to turn the hot water geyser from standby up to full on, so everybody could fill the brew can. Yeah. They all had like these metal brew cans. They were like a white colour, and the actual lid of it was a cup. And everybody, they used to brew up at Bispham regular. Yeah, that's where the geyser wasn't it? Pleasure Beach, if you was on your break, there was a geyser there.
Yeah.
So that was it.
Always
used to run on tea, did the tramway. Yeah, definitely.
I believe the British Empire and and many different army units are the same. I think there's even someone was telling me, I watched a similar thing on about the history of tanks. and the British had a particular thing that allowed them to brew tea.
Yeah.
So it's clearly a British thing as well. So in terms of then so you turn up and then they would allocate you which tram you were going to get. Did you have any favourites? Oh no, or oh yes, or I'm going to work on that one.
Like I say, this type of tram was one of my favourites, the Coronations, and I used to like the rail coaches because you was on your own. I mean, if you had a double decker where you had your staff numbers,
yeah,
the bottom number, he was classed as the bottom guard. He was in charge of the doors and the lower deck. And the top guard officially didn't have to touch the doors. But of course, you worked together.
yeah.
If you was busy upstairs collecting fares, you was the bottom guard were doing all that. But if the bottom guard was busy collecting fares, the top guard came down, he'd do the doors. You know, you worked as a team. Yeah, of course you would, yeah. But the best thing on a double decker was when you got illuminated toast. You got all your fares in, and then you just sat at the bottom of the stairs, diagonally opposite each other, having an after for an hour while you went around the illuminations.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the very rare jobs I got in the 2 years I worked there was I got overtime. They said, "Can you do some overtime as a points boy?" I said, "A points boy? Where's that?" He said, "Little Bispham." And they had like a little wooden hut you could sit in, and you had to change the points. You saw it as a Fleetwood car, you left them straight on. If it's an illuminated special, you move the points over. So they just kept moving. They didn't have to slow down. Yeah. Well, they obviously slowed down for the curve, but they didn't have to get out and stop and change the points. So you were there, so it kept everything flowing nicely. Wow. Anyway, this particular evening, I'd been on duty since about 9 in the morning. I thought, God, I'm starving. I need something for my tea. And I was in this little hut. And there's a phone box next to it. So I rung home. And that was only in Cleveland. From Little Bispham to Cleveland was like 5 minutes in the car for my dad. So he brought me some butties and a flask up in the car. Brilliant. That was my tea.
Oh yeah, you had to time that phone call, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
I've got enough time to get there to make the call.
That was
get back again.
Yeah, I only ever did it the once, but apparently they used to have regular point boys before I worked on there. I was in the 60s when it was all the routes were running.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Because you could imagine other 2 points.
They'd have to set the points at Ginn. They were automatics. Don't ask me how they were. It's something to do with the driver had power on or power off. He changed the electric points to go up Dixon Road. Yeah. There was a method in it, obviously, but I was, I didn't know how they did it because they'd done away with them by then. The Dixon Road trams.
Yeah, of course, that's right. Yeah.
And there was one occasion I went out in an open boat at 9 in the morning. It was a late June day, red hot. Sun was out, and it was probably about 9:30 at night when we finished. So that was well over 12 hours in the sun.
Yeah.
No hat on.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got to about 11:30 at night at home, and I was shaking like a leaf. Felt rotten. I mean, my dad looked at the back of my neck, bright red. He said, "You've got sunstroke, lad. Did you not have a hat on?" I said, "No." Anyway, I got up the next morning for my overtime. It didn't bother me.
Yeah.
A couple of aspirin or something, and that was it. Yeah. Went to work the next day. I wasn't going to lose my overtime the next morning.
No.
That was it. Sunstroke working in an open boat.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. For those who are unlucky enough to come to Blackpool when it's windy or rainy, we do get sunshine sometimes, don't we?
Yeah. I'll tell you something now, and I'm only telling you this because I know for a fact the driver is no longer with us. He died quite a few years ago, but we was talking away on this particular boat. We was coming down the hill from the cabin towards the Ginn, and then he suddenly looks up and thinks, "Oh my God," he left it a bit late for braking. Oh. And I thought, my God, we're going to hit the back of this tram in front. And just as about the point of impact, we had ding, ding. It was that close. You could hear ding, ding in the back cab. It was a rail coach or a brush car.
Yeah.
And it just moved out the way in time. So that was a lesson in life. Don't distract the driver.
No, absolutely.
No, I mean, nowadays you wouldn't dream of it. But we were just talking to him, and...
absolutely, yeah. The consequences, aren't there?
I'm not mentioning his name, God rest him, but I know it.
Absolutely,
if it was still alive, he'd probably say, "Don't put that in the YouTube film." But that was it. Yeah.
And in terms of your least favourite tram, did you have any ones you didn't like working on?
I don't think I did really. Cause it's more like I can't think there's any I didn't like.
Yeah.
No, I just didn't like them all.
Well, that's good, yeah. Because there are so many in Blackpool, aren't there? What makes Blackpool unique, again, is how many variations of trams do we have?
Well, the second year I worked there, I worked on the buses. So, I mean, that was a more serious job. You wasn't with somebody else like on a double-decker. You mean, in those days, with a backloaded buses. So if you're upstairs getting fares and you're looking at the mirror, making sure the platform's clear before you give them the 2 bells to set off.
Yeah.
And that was hard work. So, I mean, being on any tram was preferable to working on the buses.
Oh, I can imagine, yeah. And what sort of routes did you
Oh,
cover
we
on the
did
buses?
all of them there. I mean, one of the busy routes was the number 12, that went from the town centre along the prom, turned off at Manchester Square up to the airport,
Oh,
and
yes.
you got hammered. You got hammered on that.
Busy.
That was a very busy route.
Yeah.
And my best memory of being on the 12 was the night that Central Pier caught fire, because the prom got gridlocked, and we didn't do anything for about 3 hours. That was the best ever night on 12. But another very busy route. It replaced the Martin tram route, number 26. That went from South Pier to the town centre.
Yeah.
Used to park very similar to where they park now at Market Street, around that area. And actually, I can remember it vividly. Church Street was still open to traffic coming into town then, past Marks and Spencer's.
Yes.
I remember one time there was parked vehicles both sides, and the driver's mirrors were about that far from the wagon. I always remember that, skillful driver.
Yeah. Yes, not much leeway there.
So, and there was another route we did. It was from around the Claremont area, Westminster Road. It used to start out near Claremont Park. And that carried on through town, all around the area where Jupils were, and the sweet factories and biscuit factories. That was very busy.
Yeah.
And in those days, they could smoke upstairs. And when you went up on the top deck to collect the fare, you needed breathing apparatus. Because everybody's having a fag before they went to work in the factory.
And we forget, don't we, now?
Yeah.
Although this smoking ban in indoor premises and transport has been in, but it hasn't been in that long. But the impact, it wasn't nice, was it? I think even here there are...
that's right. That's it, yeah.
But there are ways you could light a match literally on the side of a tram.
The man is into bus preservation. He's got a Bristol RE in the back of the seat, I suppose. It says on its stubber.
Yeah.
Just
couldn't imagine, could you? Yeah. It's a different world. The interesting thing I've always found with that is just how much extra cleaning they would have had to have done.
That's right,
to make it work for themselves.
When I'd finished on trams, I went to college and didn't do any work, basically. I was very immature. I didn't work when I was at college, but I wasn't that interested in what I was doing. I went to study chemistry, and after that I became a bus driver. The last summer I worked on the tram, 73, I didn't have a job at the end of it. And they took on conductors in Ribble in November. Probably out to work about 6 weeks, and that's history then. Once I got conducting on Ribble, I sat in the Leyland National at Knott End, and the driver said, are you learning to drive yet? I said, yeah, I've had a drive in my dad's car. He said, what sort of car have you got? I said, a Cortina. He said, well, get behind the wheel of this. He said, it's only like a Cortina. In fact, it's easier to drive. The trouble is, he said, it's 37 foot long.
Yeah, it's the
so I got in there, and he said, that's the gear there, 2 pedal. Wow, no clutch, I thought, wow, how modern. Put it in gear, power steering. I thought, wow, I want to drive one of these. That was it. As soon as I got old enough, 21, I was into driving school.
Wow.
And passed my test when I was 21. That was in summer of 75, and stayed there till it became Stagecoach in 91.
Right.
Got a summer job on the railway in 91 and stayed on the railway till I retired.
So what was it you did on the railway?
Well, I got a summer job in the booking office.
Okay.
And then I got kept on. I actually worked down the Kerry sidings during the winter just to get a permanent job. And then they asked me to come back up the station and do train crew rostering, because when I worked on the buses, I was a trade union rep for the rosters and that. So they said, you've had some experience of rostering. And I'll be honest, I hated it.
Yeah.
Because if you couldn't give somebody the Saturday off and they were going somewhere, you was Mr. Horrible,
It was very
it was
personal.
the most, I didn't like it. I didn't like saying no to them. And, if friends I'd tell them to put in weeks in advance and say, right, do so-and-so weekend, we'll go away somewhere, or Tuesday and Wednesday in such and such a week because nobody's off. And of course, I said, you always get your mates off, because when they put in, I knew where the gaps were, and it was simple as that. And people hated you if you didn't do this for them. And on the other side, people were grateful sometimes, they used to like the overtime, it's like you ring them up. But when I got the chance, I was, it wasn't the fact that I moved. I'd had enough of it. They could tell I wasn't happy. So they said, would you like to go back into ticket offices again? And I did it. It's a job I really enjoyed. I was on the area. I did Poltley Fylde.
Oh, brilliant.
that was 2 days at Polton, early and late shift. I did a day at St Anne's, a day at Morecambe, and my spare day I could be anywhere.
Yeah.
In fact, I
Yeah.
used to go up to Windermere sometimes. That was a nice trip out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, whilst I was doing that, a promotion turned up, and I was station supervisor in Blackpool North, so back in Blackpool then, and promotion which helped the pension at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
That was it. Yeah. So
what we've noticed from different conversations, both with these tram talks as we set them up, there's definitely been a theme, Robert, where people when they were younger have got into elements of the transport system in some form or other. Not just the trams, it could be the way people repair them, for example.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And they had an interest in it, and eventually somehow their career has taken them into something connected to it, and it's no coincidence, even though their life was never planned that way, but it's something that's
well, I think regarding railways, what affected me was travelling by train to Liverpool on a regular basis. That's where the family were from, and we used to set off from Fleetwood at about 8:20 in the morning, and the train actually joined with another portion from Blackpool North. It joined up at Polton, and we arrived in Liverpool Exchange at 10 to 10. That's an hour and a half. Wow. Now that is good going.
Yeah.
And when we left Fleetwood, there'd be a little tank engine with a couple of carriages on. But when we got to Liverpool, you'd walk a long way back. It was right at the back of the train then, because it attached to the Blackpool portion. Yeah. And when we got to the front, it'd be a big green engine with a nameplate on.
Yeah,
probably a Jubilee or something
How did
like
this
that.
happen?
Yeah, and it was fascinating. And coming home, we used to get, I think it was a Glasgow train, and we used to go off at Preston and just wait a few minutes, and a connection from Manchester Victoria to Fleetwood. That was in the diesel days, that was, yeah.
Gosh.
But in the steam days, it used to be a direct Fleetwood, 5:15 out of Liverpool Exchange, and it used to divide at Preston. One half went to Windermere, the other half went to Fleetwood.
Yes.
And we had a great aunt came up to visit us, and she ended up in Lancaster. She got on the wrong portion from Liverpool.
Oh,
Auntie May, she ended up in Windermere. Halfway to Windermere.
Yeah, if you don't get
she was hours late arriving at Fleetwood.
That must have been a stressful moment.
She got on the wrong portion, yeah. I always remember that. I was worried where Auntie May got to, and she turned up quite a few hours late.
Slightly distressed by sound.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And interestingly, you've got two stations that no longer exist, isn't it?
Yeah, we had two. We used to get on the way that was just near where Asda is now, the other side of the road from Asda.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So just going back to your time as a tram guard, and also a bus guard, was it? Were they called?
Conductor, on Blackpool Transport, yeah.
So did you interchange? So if ever they said there's a big demand on Tuesdays or the illuminations, we need some additional help from the bus side. Were you able
what happened? You volunteer for overtime. You just put your number on the list and say you were available. So if you had a bus turn, mainly you would be on day to day. You'd never got a turn for the week.
Yeah.
I think you may have done very rarely if you've been on quite a long time, but as a student you wouldn't. And if you're available for overtime, you probably do a morning shift on the buses, a set duty, and then it'd be overtime. Afternoon special, which would probably involve the illuminations in the autumn.
Yeah.
On some days on the tram, it'd be 9 o'clock in the morning special. If it was a lovely day, you'd stay out. You'd stay out till the driver wanted to go home, basically.
So you'd be able to work here, work on the buses, and then also
you could do both. Yeah, you could do your morning shift on the buses, then do afternoon overtime.
Wow, that must have been.
They used to call it grab. They'd say evening grab. You're doing evening grab after your bus turn and all that, or morning grab before your late turn on the buses.
Yeah.
You do a 9 o'clock special on the trams, then do your late shift on the buses. Yeah, wow. You could do both. Yeah.
Excellent.
In fact, some of the drivers did both. They drive trams and buses.
Yeah.
Used to call them a free badge man. They had the bus conductor's badge, the bus driver's badge, and the tram driver's as well.
Well, so I bet they were popular with people doing.
They were very versatile then. Yeah. In fact, you used to have some guys. They were called depot reserves, and they could do all three. They used to drive the night buses sometimes to depot reserve.
Yeah.
They'd be on standby, to do anything.
Yeah, because town like Blackpool and Fylde, we can be a population of 200,000 in terms of the Fylde, or 300,000 throwing Liverpool and St Anne's.
Yeah.
But then over a weekend we could go to 1 million.
That's right. Yeah.
Everybody piles here. The weather's great. There's events on. There's things on in the theatres, So we have to accommodate those big
That's right.
soldiers. Yeah.
Well, I tell you, one of the big jobs we used to do was if you're on evening overtime, when the shows came out, they'd have a few double deckers at North Pier, because they'd have one going north for the hotels towards Bisping. They'd have one going south for all those going down South Shore way. And in fact, every stop after Manchester Square, all of those roads were lined with boarding houses. Alexander Road, St Chad's, Crystal Road, all of those. They were all full of boarding houses in the 70s.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And all the illuminated tours, they didn't start at Pleasure Beach like now. They all started at North Pier. And they'd have as many trams as possible. You didn't have to book like you do now on the internet or anything. You just turn up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there'd be hundreds waiting, and they'd pile them on, and that's it. You'd set off. That was it.
Excellent.
Yeah. You know, there'd be as many trams as you could possibly get out on the illuminated.
To try and maximise that.
Yeah. Same with Market Day. You get as many volunteers as possible. Tuesdays were a very busy Market Day.
Yeah. Yeah. And again,
Fridays were busy, but of course some people went home on a Friday.
Yeah.
But saying that, in the 70s, I think Saturday was your main changeover day.
Oh, really? Not because at the moment it's Friday, isn't it?
Yeah, it is now. In those days, it used to be Saturday to Saturday in the old days, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But this type of tram, you get loads of luggage on these. If you was, you know, the platform, you fill it with luggage, same with double deckers. You get all your cases on the platforms.
And it makes me smile because there's been conversations when we've done the tram extension work up to North Station about it. So, where does the luggage go? And it's like, well, the same place it used to go on the trams. You know, you find a way that's safe and manageable, and in all sorts of different ways. But the trams have always been able to accommodate that, haven't they? They've not needed special luggage racks in that sense.
I always remember talking about who you were with. I always remember one driver said, "You'll always remember me, lad." He said, "If you look at my number, which is 478, he said, they're the running notches of the tram." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, notch 4, he said, that's full series. That means we're not going through any resistors. Notch 7, he said, that's full field, so we're flying along, so there's no resistors involved. And field shunt," he said, "that means the field goes through a resistor, but he said at 30 mile an hour, you're not going to overheat it, are you?" So he said, "That's the running notches on a tram, 4, 7 and 8. You can run all day on those 3 notches." So I always remember him as 4, 7, 8.
You're not going to forget that, number.
You used to wear your number on your lapel, I've still got mine.
Oh, yeah.
In a drawer at home, yeah.
Wonderful. Gosh, yeah. They sound like great days, Robert.
In fact, if you were spare and you sat in the canteen, it wouldn't be Robert Stewart, report to depot inspector. 4327 depot office. That was it. You were just a number. You weren't a name on Blackpool Transport in the 70s. No.
Yeah. Gosh.
That's how you was. Yeah.
That's quite impressive, eh? Quite impressive in terms of I know I think the same for a lot of transport companies. Even today, there's a lot of people from the services connect with them quite easily because it's quite structured, organised.
Right. Well, I think any transport was like that, especially the railway, because I think in the old days they used to like ex-military people to become train drivers because we're disciplined people, used to rules and regulations, being told what to do, which you know you can't argue on the railway. I mean, number one, safety is paramount. Same as on here now.
It is, isn't it? Safety is everything. We're biggest priorities. Everyone's safety, passengers, your own, your colleagues. So military people have that same approach, don't they? So you do get, even now, a lot of military people work here.
That's right.
From the UK around the world. So just a little bit there, and then just check we're still okay. Yep, brilliant.
Talking about luggage on the platform, an interesting one about.
So you just go,
talking about luggage on the platform, an interesting one. When the first holiday I remember was to Isle of Man in 1959 when I was 6. I remember Dad coming out the shop downstairs, locking the front door, and the double-deck balloon turned up at the tram stop. She's right outside the front door of the shop on Low Street, and he put the cases on the platform, and that was our transport down to the Isle of Man boat.
Wow.
Because the terminus, it was literally walking distance to the Isle of Man terminal in Fleetwood. So, talking about luggage on platform.
Absolutely. Your taxi was a tram.
Yeah, and when we went to the Isle of Man, my dad took me down below on the steam, and we looked inside the engine room. There was a big brass plaque, and it said Camel Birkenhead, lot number so-and-so. He said, "Your granddad built this boat," because granddad used to work there. He wasn't an engineer. He used to just scrape the bottoms when they went for oil.
Very important job, though.
Red lead, part of that. Just a a shipwright, as they call
Yeah.
them, I think, in those days. But, you know, I thought, oh, my granddad built this boat,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
and
it.
that
Sort
was
of
a little
provoke
kid of 6,
yourself. Yeah,
yeah.
you do, though, don't you? You
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
And we talk now, we hear it a lot. Oh, integrated transport, as if it's a
yeah.
brand new thing. And the Victorians, they were doing this for fun, weren't they? You know, they've got tram, train, all meet in the same place and joining a ship to take you to, which I imagine felt like you were going to the other end of the world.
It did. It felt like going on a mini Canada in those
Yeah,
days. Like you see these films, you know, the Titanic. It was like a miniature version of that. You know, all the
yeah.
stairways and the big posh dining rooms with the
Mm,
tablecloths and the silver sails. That's what it was like on the old steam
yeah.
packet boats. Yeah.
Absolutely, and it's sad in a way that we've lost some of that, but fortunately, we're enough. I've always thought that enough of the foundations were kept to allow us one day to hopefully to bring some of these things back, i.e., the infrastructure
Yeah.
and so forth that could allow us to bring those.
When you say to me like your early years, do you think it influenced your future? Well, could you imagine as a child going to the Isle of Man, what did we have there? Electric. We had a horse tram along the prom. We had
Yeah.
the electric railway from Derby Castle to Laxey, right through to Ramsey. And we still had the steam trains in 63. We had both of them running. We had the Peel one as well as the Port Erin one now.
Wow.
So, and buses, of course. So
Yeah.
that holiday we'd have gone on buses, electric railway and steam trains.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and then a
absolutely,
boat together.
and a
So
boat as well to do it all.
and then just to cap it all, when we got a bit older, we actually flew to Jersey on holiday. That was in 1963 when I was 10. We flew from Blackpool Airport to Jersey, which
Wow.
was, you know, to actually fly in 63 was quite a thing. It was
yeah.
an old ex-wartime Douglas DC-3 Dakota.
Oh, Dakota. Oh, my
Yeah.
word.
We didn't go by tram though to Squares. I think we had to get a taxi.
Gosh,
We could have got the tram to Stargate and walk with the case, but we didn't know.
I've lived in Zimbabwe, and Dakotas was very popular still.
Yeah.
In recent years there. They're workhorses, aren't they?
Oh yeah, they went very fast. So you could look out the window and see a steam train down below doing about the same speed.
Yeah, that's
I remember
right.
that. Probably down south somewhere.
Yeah.
You could see the actual exhaust of a steam train. It wasn't going much slower than us.
Yeah, they're absolute workhorses.
Yeah.
So in terms of the modern day, Robert, we met each other on a heritage tram.
That's
tour.
right. Yeah.
So we move forwards, huge amounts of change. We there's the clocks turns over the years.
Yeah.
The system carried on. It survived. It then was renewed around 2010, 2011, 2012. The new system opened. There was an uncertainty about the heritage trams. There's uncertainty about the depot, obviously, which is why Tramtown came along. And suddenly what was mainstream becomes heritage.
Yeah.
And so on, and that's how we met. So, what are your thoughts on the trams now and where we are?
I think it's absolutely brilliant. And the question I ask a lot of the younger end that are involved, I say, how come somebody your age is interested in these? And I explain why I'm interested, because as a kid I saw them all and I worked on them. And it's great that so many of the younger end, I mean, you know, the likes of James and Alistair are good examples, and they're keen on transport generally.
Absolutely.
But, you know, to want to drive these and they're only like, you know, late 20s, I think it's brilliant because they haven't seen them in real action like I have.
No.
No, it's so good that the younger end are involved.
Absolutely, and they keep it alive, don't they? Because people, younger people see it, and they'll see these riding on the prom, and then wow, where I want to get involved, or they're part of their memories, then, aren't they?
I know they've said with the steam preservation movement, there became a time there where they were getting very worried that the younger end weren't coming in, but I think that's happened now. They've got apprenticeships and all sorts for.
Brilliant.
But it's good to hear that we've got so many younger end that are interested. I'm pleased with that.
Yeah, it's crucial, isn't it? Because Generation Steam, was it? They called it that. They were losing that people who saw it in mainstream life. Yeah.
Well, I'm also involved with the bus preservation group, and the one I'm in is the Ribble one, and we seem to be pretty short of the younger end there, you know, and like the skilled people, like the my age group, they're in the 60s, you know, and what we're going to do when these are getting too old to do the jobs, because it's all up here, you know, it's not being passed on, you know, it's a big worry. But luckily here we've got it, but it's the engineering side of this still exists as well, you know, that's a good side of it, isn't it?
Yeah, there's for those
Still,
that don't know,
you know, there's skill here to repair them. The likes of 147 and trams like that, they're under repaired. It
such a unique thing, isn't it? Because none of this, you can't just buy this from the Far East. It has to be manufactured.
Well, until a few years ago, they still had their own blacksmith here, didn't they?
Yeah, that's right.
I dare say they could resurrect that, couldn't they? That blacksmith shop.
Yeah,
just
that's it. Yeah,
the moment it's mothballed into.
Part of the plan is when it relocates that the forge will be coming across.
Yeah, because a lot of these parts have to be made, don't they?
They do. Yeah, everything has to be.
Things like the lifeguards on the older trams, they have to be handmade.
Yeah,
you can't go and buy one from B&Q.
No, that's right. Even the underframes have been made.
Oh yeah.
Which is, it's almost it's refreshing in a way, you know, a blast from the past to see that in a world which has often been outsourcing to far remote lands, and different types of steel grades have been used, all those things.
Yeah.
To see something actually being manufactured here in Blackpool, to work in Blackpool with its unique coastal challenging conditions.
That's right. Yeah.
So in terms of the you're a big supporter of the heritage tram offer and so on.
Yeah.
What bits do you enjoy about that, Robert?
Well, I just like riding on them basically and all, and I've given a bit towards the restoration of some of the trams.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a nostalgic trip. Like when 715 had its last run, I like to get involved with that really.
Yeah. It's a very sociable scene, isn't it?
I've got to make quite a few friends on here.
Yeah.
Since I've been travelling on them. I mean, I used to come on my own and eventually got friendly and, you know, got very friendly with John, who works in Tram Town, and Gordon, and one of the conductors I'm very friendly with. Yeah.
I find everyone's very sociable.
I do. I find you're never on your own. If you get on one of these, they always have a natter with you. That's how we are.
Absolutely. And what I like as well is, even with the upgrade, there was the old trams. My experience of them was, it was always very sociable. People would chat and talk. Going home late at night or whatever. It's continued with the new trams. People will talk. It's not like the London Underground where everyone.
I think it's nice. I mean, sometimes now I do catch the modern trams. I've got my now card. I don't need to pay on them. And one of my little trips, I'll just, because I've retired from the rail, I haven't still had my free pass. I'll just go to Preston, do a bit of shopping, and I'll come on via Blackpool South and get on at Squires Gate.
Yeah.
Get off the train at Squires Gate, walk down to Stargate, tram depot, and it's nice. You've still got conductors on them.
Yeah. That's right, isn't it? And that allows those sorts of happy conversations.
Yeah, it's nice. They come up and, you know, check your ticket and that.
Yeah, I generally think we've got the best of both worlds at the moment, where you've got, we haven't lost the past, and it's got a great future, and you've got, you know, level platform access.
I think they're a lovely tram as well, the ones that run in, the modern ones in Blackpool. I think they're much nicer than what they run in Manchester.
Yeah, they've got...
they seem a nicer type build.
Certainly comfier.
Oh, they are, yeah.
And but yeah, no, it's definitely a social scene. And I think our next video, and I'm really looking forward to making this with you, is we'll have a chat, and you can explain some of the things that that you see along the route, and because part of this was the tram has survived in a changing world. The world's changed around it, hasn't it? I remember we spoke earlier, and we were talking about how people use the landmarks.
Yeah.
And even though those landmarks have gone, they'll still say, "I want to go here."
I remember when I was starting in '72, people still asked for the engine sheds in Fleetwood. They've been shut 5 or 6 years. Well, probably longer. I think they shut about 66.
Yeah.
So they've been shut about 6 years. You'd say sheds. It was where Fisherman's Friend is now. That was the old steam engine sheds.
Right.
Yeah. I forget the tram stuff. It's either Lingfield or Lindell Road, one of those around that area.
Yeah.
And they were still asking for it.
It is, isn't it? Yeah, and the tramway sort of survived through the middle of all of that.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic and so on. So, well, thank you, Robert. That was really, really good. So what we'll do is, at some point over the next 6 months, we're going to see Robert again. And we'll be on a tram, though, this time, and we'll be looking around.
Yeah, and I look forward to that,
some of the landmarks. Well, thank you, Robert, for sharing your memories with us. And look forward to seeing you for part 2.
Right, very good.
Brilliant.